Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 36 of UnCoNfY Convos. This is your boy Shiv, your guy, your dude, your man, your boy, your man boy, whatever you want to call me. And today we're going to talk about musician anxiety. If you're a musician, I'm sure there's anxieties that go along with that, but there's also a lot of beauty in doing that as well. And to talk about this anxiety, we have an awesome guest on today. She's a fellow East Greenwich High School alum. Go Avengers. And for listeners, Avengers are the mascot for the high school. They don't want to, I want you to know that. But in addition to being a East Greenwich High School alum, she's an indie pop singer and songwriter who plays at venues all across the country. Shares the stage with as big as names as John McLaughlin, Ava Max, and Betty Who. She was crowned grand champion of the Mid-Atlantic Singer-Songwriter competition in 2018, delivered a TEDx talk at Firefly in 2018, and in Spotify's 2020 Wrapped, in the past 2 years, she's had 1.16 million streams. Come on, get out of here. And in the past year, 678,000 streams, 32,000 hours of listening, and 218,000 listeners across 89 countries. So global. And so without further introduction, thank you so much for being on, Marielle Kraft.
Oh, thank you so much. That was overwhelming. I really appreciate it. I mean, I wrote that bio on my website, but it's nice to hear it back, you know?
I'm just stating facts here.
Yeah, well, thank you.
I love you're like, yeah, I wrote that. So I made all of it up. No, it's true. But
no one will ever know.
The world will never know. But I do want to say, I mean, this is random, but I've been listening to your music lately, like super into it. Been listening to the song In It Together.
A jam.
So catchy.
Thank you.
And you collaborated with, remind me, his name is Josh, and then...
Yep, Joshua Howard.
Joshua Howard, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Thanks. Yeah. All right.
Incredible. I'm just like, I'm jamming out to it. I'm like, this is amazing. And all the songs are great. But I wonder, even in that, right? Like, how do you connect with musicians like that, or Joshua Howard, right? Like, how did that come about, and how do you even decide, like, oh, like, let's collaborate and let's put this song out together?
Yeah, totally. So co-writing has been pretty new to me in the last, I guess, about a year and a half. Like, I only ever wrote songs alone, years in the last like 6 years that I've been songwriting. Mm-hmm. But Joshua and I opened for another act. We were on the same bill in Philly in, I think it was October of 2018. So about, 2 years ago. So we played a show and we just met at the venue, didn't know each other, really mm-hmm. loved his vibe. And since we were both, like, I was just outside of Philly based and he was in Philly based. And so we just sort of became friends. We would just be those musician friends to each other that we could come back from tour and be like, I hated that, or like, that was the best, or like, this show flopped and like, I'm not going to tell anybody. Like, I'm going to post that picture on social media. That's just me on the stage, not the crowd. So nobody knows that there was no one there. And so it's just like really nice to have somebody who gets it. And I'm sure in comedy, like, you can go through things and you're, normie friends don't know what you're talking about or why that's a struggle, but like your other comedic friends get it. So to have musician friends like Joshua was really special. So for months we would just like grab coffee once a month and just sort of like be super candid with one another about how it's going. Mm-hmm. And then in April of 2019, mm-hmm. We were grabbing coffee one day and we were both particularly like in a low place that day. And basically we were kind of just like, listen, if you're going through it, like, same, like, I get it. We're in this together kind of thing. And we were like, wait, this is like a pretty powerful moment. Let's write a song about this right now. So we went up to his apartment. He lived in an apartment above the coffee shop. It was very convenient.
Wow.
We literally walked up flights of stairs to his apartment and I just like started strumming on the guitar, and just like the chorus was the first thing that came to me, just the line over and over. If we're in it, then we're in it together. And like, that's just what I sang over and over. And then he started playing his keys, and like he's so soulful at the keys. And then literally the song, we wrote it in like about an hour. And so, you know, it's kind of like in those moments, you know, that something is special if it just kind of pours out of you.
Yeah.
And for us, it felt like very kismet in that moment. And so, you know, we're both kind of just cutting our teeth, touring all the time, like wanting to do this for the rest of our life. And our voices really blended and our story is really blended. So we were like, why don't we just put this out? Let's do it.
Yeah.
So we recorded it like 5 months later. We brought all of our friends into the studio who are also pursuing music full time and like are also the people who understand the struggles. And those are the people on the chorus in the last like chorus of the song. There's like a big choir. So that's all of our friends that we brought in to like sing it with us. To literally be in it together with these people who are, you know, a part of our life in that way. And so it's really cool because we released it in February and then the pandemic hit in March. And like every commercial in America is like, we're in this together, America, or like, we're in this together, Nashville. And I'm like, I really feel like I spoke like, you know, some like into the future. I was like, oh, this is hope. I didn't predict the pandemic, but I predicted the hope and unity, I would like to think. But it was really timely, and that song has been a really cool, like hopeful, just like 3 minutes that people have been sharing all year, which is I feel very grateful to have done that in such a timely way.
Yeah. You're right. Like the message that it spreads is very relevant to
Yeah,
this
like
time.
more so than I could have ever predicted or imagined.
Right. That's awesome. That's really cool how like you know, that relationship formed and strengthened, right? Because you guys like were talking a lot and just sharing like in that struggle of hustling. And
Yeah.
then would you say like, I mean, I'm sure, but it's like when you collaborate and you know someone a lot better, it helps.
Definitely. And I mean, songwriting itself is pretty vulnerable. So when you're in a room with somebody you already trust and who already knows some of your story, you don't have to be afraid to share something that might deter them in one way or another or be judged. Um,
Right.
and songwriters are not very judgmental anyway because we all have to be vulnerable in order to make something good. So it usually is like a pretty quick transition to lowering your wall. But with Joshua that day, it was really wonderful because we had already done that for months, you know, so we just went in completely authentically and we were like, all right, this is what I'm feeling and I'm not going to sugarcoat it and let's write about it.
Right. That's awesome. And it's great that it happened so fast, just 1 hour.
Yeah, it was really cool. And then it's stuck in your head for 2 weeks. And as a musician and songwriter, like if the song is stuck in your head the next day, like that's when you know it's a hit. Or if
Wow.
you're singing it in the grocery store later, you're like, okay, yep, that was a hit. And it together was just like so sticky for us. So we were like, okay, we got to make this something.
Yeah. That's great. That's awesome. And I've heard like other musicians I follow too, like talk about like, you know, you have an idea and you do it quickly and like, or like it just really like clicks.
Yeah.
And like, that's so cool that it just like happens so fast.
Yeah, you want that to happen every time you sit down to write a song, and it rarely does. So when it happens, you're like, thank goodness.
My goodness.
It's great.
Yeah. Yeah. You also mentioned in that though, too, like the grind of like being like
Yeah.
hustling, like you mentioned cutting teeth. We use that term in comedy too, like cutting your teeth at open mics. I'm
Yeah.
sure you guys probably have open mics as well. Like that's where you start. And I'm wondering what that hustle was like the traveling of it, showing up. Did you have to do multiple shows a night? Those nights where you had audiences where there weren't many people?
Absolutely. I mean, when you start touring to a new city, there's no way to really get a crowd unless you've previously gone viral, you know? And
Mhm.
like obviously have not done that yet, or else maybe I wouldn't be here. No, I totally would. Totally would. I'm just kidding.
Inside
Um,
joke.
exactly. And so for me, that first, I guess, year of touring to predominantly pretty empty rooms outside of the mid-Atlantic where I was based. I could go to Philly, I could go to Boston because that's near Rhode Island where we grew up. So I had some people there. I
Mhm.
could go to DC and New York. Like in those four cities, I could do pretty well. But if I mean, my first time in like Charlotte, North Carolina, or like Atlanta, I mean, those places, I really had to depend on other artists who were local on the bill with me. And we would strategize. Like I would be the out of towner, they would be the local, and we'd kind of pool our resources to hope to fill a room.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
sometimes, like, it's just an off night and people don't come or it snows and then the show's still on but people don't want to travel and it's just like really tough to still get up and do your job and play because those three people who did show up are
Right.
there for you. And so you have to get out of your head and think, okay, I'm missing 200 people, but those 4 are who I need to focus on tonight, not the lack of success that I'm feeling right now, because those 4 people are the success. They showed up 1,000 miles from home.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of just really, really just learning how to be in the moment and be grateful for who is there, not who's not. And then just keep getting better and not let the number of people dictate your performance that night. I'm sure, I mean, comedy, you feed off the crowd too. Like,
Right.
we literally have to feed off the crowd for what we're doing.
Right. Right.
And so when there's not people who are interactive with you or not engaged, it's so hard to create that in yourself. And
Mhm.
so that's a lot of cutting your teeth, is just still getting up and giving the best show you could possibly give to a room that's less than ideal. And then next time you go, maybe there's 12 people, and then maybe because those 4 people were so impressed by you, they're going to bring their friends, and you just have to deliver every night.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a grind, but it's so rewarding once you go back that 3rd time to Charlotte and now you have a full room. You're like, okay, this is why we do it. But
Yeah.
it's tough. It's tough. Yeah.
Yeah, no, those are a lot of good lessons in there, I think, because it's similar, like in terms of starting comedy, but it's you have that those first moments where you have 4, like you said, 4 people in the audience and focusing on them and giving the best show. It's like I learned that too, like after a while doing comedy, and I was like, you get upset, you're like, oh, there's nobody, like I should be performing in front of everybody,
Yeah.
and then you're like, well, no, like if there's 4 people, do your best, try and get them to laugh, because the whole intention is to bring up the energy and to make it a pleasurable experience for like the audience.
Yeah.
So that's really, and I'm sure it's like humbling too, right?
Oh,
It's like,
is it ever?
is
I
it?
mean, it's really crazy to be like, my first ever sold out show. I haven't had a ton, but like my first ever one was in Boston, and
Mhm,
it was my first like headlining with my full band, like sold out show in Boston,
mhm.
which was about a year and a half ago. And it was like, you're on the highest of highs when you have a crowd who's literally there for you. Your name is on the ticket. They know the words to your songs. You're like selling stuff at the merch table after. Like, it's just the greatest feeling in the world. You're like, I'm famous.
Yeah.
And then like the next like weekend you're in Chicago, and like literally 8 people are there for the headliner and you're the opener, and they're like, I'm sorry, I'm actually going to go to the bar till she's done, and you're like, wow, I am literally a peasant and nobody. And so it is very humbling, but you got to have both experiences to really appreciate.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that the highs and the lows, because you're right. Like you do have, sometimes you have a bigger show, and then it quickly, then you're back to at a mic or something similar.
Yeah.
I don't know if that happens with you, but like at least in comedy, like comics, like they still go to open mics for a really long time. So
Yeah,
it's,
totally.
yeah, and that's where you meet people too, though. Like even say you met Joshua Howard there, like you meet people you can come up with, collaborate.
Exactly. And I think building that, like, your class or your like cohort of people who are kind of doing the same thing you are in the same steps in the same timeline
Yeah,
is the most valuable part of the grind. Like, you can't do it alone. And
right.
so to continue to go back to the place where you got your first steps, like, it shows that, one, you have a lot of humility, that you're not better than anybody or you're not better than anything, but
Hmm.
also like it's a great like just give in to build a community that's going to help you along the way, which I think is the most important.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. And another thing you mentioned too is like being in the moment while you're there. Like I learned that too, and it was like it's some of these mics and stuff when there's nobody, like on a Friday night or some people are doing on something else, and you're like there, and you're like, what am I doing with my life, right? Because it's like so you're like just one of a few people, and then
Hmm.
learning to, like, I'm sure for you, like maybe enjoy the music or enjoy the art that's being performed, and like just enjoying it for what it is in that moment. Did that require like training for you, or at the beginning was that tougher, or were you just like,
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's definitely, you don't know how to navigate it till you're doing it. I
mhm,
think it's really just about gaining the experience by actually getting out there and doing it. Nobody's able to tell you what it feels like to have to focus on 3 people in an empty room, until you're literally
right,
there doing it. Um, But in a way, you know, it allows me the freedom to make mistakes, because if I make a mistake in that room, I can literally look all 3 people in the eye and be like, "We're friends now. It's fine," you know?
Yeah.
Like, there's just, like, a lack of pressure there that just, like,
Yeah.
really allows you to almost, like, build a friendship while you're performing. Do you ever feel that way where, like, now you know these people just from being on the stage, like, because you can only focus on these people?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think it's the ability to let go of any expectation or self pressure or whatever,
Mhm,
and just
mhm.
like just love being in that moment, having people who care enough to come out and just like loving what you do. So it
Yeah.
is pretty freeing in a sense, you know?
Yeah, it is. It is. That's such a like a good point. Like it's so true. Like to when you have few people in the room, like you all automatically like almost by necessity
Yes.
have to become friends because
Literally, yeah.
it's
It's a
super.
survival tactic in a lot of ways. It's almost like when you're on a small flight and like you're taxiing for 4 hours and like you literally have to make friends with your seat buddy or else you'll go insane.
Yeah.
And it's almost like when you're at a show and like it's just pretty much a flop in a lot of ways. You're just like, "Well, you're here and I'm here, so let's get through it together. Like, what's your name?" You know, and like I'm dedicating songs to these random strangers I've never met, and they're
Yeah.
like, you know,
Yeah.
it's honestly it's pretty cool. It's actually really special, and it's something I think I'll always cherish.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like some of the coolest moments when you have like a good
Yeah.
moment in those rooms, I feel like. It's like
Yeah, those are the
those
shows you actually end up remembering more than some of the bigger shows that feel less personal, because it's like, "Oh, Ronnie, you know, just went through a divorce last weekend and we just talked about a, you know, like he was crying during this song and you know whatever." Like it's just it's really the way to actually build relationship with your audiences in those small rooms that feel like it's a failure of a show, but it's actually the biggest success because those people have such a new connection with you that's stronger than every other show, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, especially when there's a few people. I mean, last night I was listening to voice memos of old like comedy recordings, and I heard like it's always in rooms where there's four people, and like I'd see myself like hear crowd work, and it's just with those people in those moments. I'm
Yeah.
like, that was so much. That was like more fun than a
Yeah,
big
and
show. That was
sometimes
so
you
much
do better because you don't have that pressure, and you're like, "Wow, that was the funniest thing I've ever said," or like,
fun.
"Wow, that was the coolest riff I've ever sung, and I did it for literally 4 people, what the heck? Why wasn't it a full room?"
Yeah.
But it's cool because if you can channel that
Yeah.
in the big rooms, then you've hacked it, you know?
Right. Right. Yeah, no, it's true, and also like even being like present and being in those moments, learning how to like enjoy those moments. I know you mentioned like, and we've talked about this before, but being like in a cabin for a week,
Yes.
like shutting down, not being around technology, you know. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering if that decision or that even that process helps you in music, like just performing or being present in general.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So for those listening or watching, I take 1 week out of every year, or I have just for the last 3 years since I started this career, off the grid, solo in a cabin in the woods in November for a week.
Mhm.
And I do my best, like resting and songwriting and reflecting there. And I just got back a couple of weeks ago from the Finger Lakes. It was amazing.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, it really forces me to be present with myself. And it's
Mhm.
funny because, like, I feel like we don't have to really get to know ourselves anymore because we're constantly focusing on other people and other things, and our personas on different social media is not necessarily who we actually are. And so when I cut out all distractions and social media and stuff in the cabin, I really have to figure out, okay, like, am I enjoying this? You know, like, am I actually motivated to do this for the right reasons? Am I like really like pushing through some of the hard moments? Am I a full believer in myself or do I just pretend to be? So I do a lot of that soul searching in the cabin every year.
Mhm.
And I think it really does help when I go play shows after that or write songs after that, because
Mhm.
I've reconnected with myself and I know that, like, if I go to a room and there's 4 people, at least I'm still the biggest believer in myself because I've had that conversation recently. You know what I mean? Or like,
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
doesn't completely wreck my self-esteem, because I know that I have like value in myself by just being who I am. And it like sounds a little hokey and corny, like, okay, Hallmark card, but
Yeah.
like it actually is that way once you sit down and like really reflect about it. And I'm really grateful for that because I think I think I would be a lot more like unstable or like sporadic in my emotions and my self-identity if I didn't have a time to recenter every year.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really strong. I mean, I completely agree. Like being able to be with yourself probably just in general and not have like distractions, because if we have like our phones and stuff like that and everything, it's like, or music to listen to, even those, like everything, it's like, it's always, you can, if you have thoughts in your head and like
Yeah.
one that you don't like, you can like quickly go to something else. uh,
Exactly. You don't have to sit with anything anymore. You can completely forget about it by scrolling TikTok or whatever.
yeah.
So yeah, writer's block, I struggle a lot with writer's block.
Mhm.
And so if I'm writing a song alone, like, you know, in my daily life and I get stuck, I'll just like pick up my phone for a few minutes, like scroll whatever. And then before I know it, my momentum and the idea is gone. And that's my fault, you know, but like that's what my habit is. But
Yeah.
being in the cabin every year, like when I'm writing a song, like I have to literally sit there and work through the writer's block, you
Right.
know, instead of an unnatural way of doing that by like scrolling, I'll like go for a walk and continue to think of the idea as I'm walking, or
Right.
I'll like, you know, play a game of solitaire, get my brain working in a different way and then come back. But it's really cool to find those like more like natural ways of working through things rather than just like feeding myself social media.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's strong to, and shows like kind of bit more awareness to be able to be like, oh, like I'm gonna do solid or strategically do things, right? Like when you have an idea and to like go for a walk and think about it. That's like really and even for me, like meditating and all that stuff, it's like I've learned
Yeah,
like, oh, like I'm aware of, even if I do it, I'm like aware that it happened. Yeah, I mean, I'm like, you
that's
just
true.
browse Instagram for like 20 minutes. Why'd you do that? Yeah, I mean, but I'm like,
Exactly. Like, what did
it's
you even get from that? You know, like
yeah.
nothing.
But then I'm like, it's okay. And then I'm like, just like know that you did that. But it was interesting because you're like, you mentioned the phrase like sitting in it. So it's like whenever you're like have an uncomfortable thought or moment, it's like sitting in that moment. I was watching Batman the other night. It's kind of random, but it's like a big part of like the first movie is like living it, or like being able to stay in your fear. So like
Mm,
when he was like talking, he was like, because Batman was bats, but it was like he couldn't relive that moment. He just wanted to like go away from it. But then by like thinking about it and like actually like staying in it and like thinking about like how like the phobia, like he was able to conquer it. So
mm.
even like when you said like believing in yourself or like something like that, or my value comes from me, just being myself, it's almost like sitting in that is probably like you face some uncomfortable things, but once you like are able to sit in it for a little bit longer, you can like let it pass. That sounds
Yeah.
very, again, I don't know if that's Hallmark Cardi, but I don't know.
No, yeah, wise words of Batman. We really love that. I took a lot from that like anecdote right there, but I think the biggest thing I actually took from that is that Batman's afraid of bats. I'm not really a comic book like person, but I honestly thought he was called Batman because he like has a black mask that has like little ears. Like I did not know it literally stemmed from his phobia of bats.
Yeah.
I need to get out from whatever rock I've been living under. But that is amazing. And I think you're so right. Once you face it and you sit in it, like you can prove once you do the small stuff, you can work toward the big stuff, you know?
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's a really good point. That was deep. That was deep. Deep conversation. uh,
uh,
I was like being in the present moment and then went into fear.
yeah.
I but another thing that I'm curious about too, like in terms of your process is, obviously like you do that, once a year where you go to the cabin, like disconnect. Um, what's like the structure of your days like in terms of schedule? Because it's creative, so I don't know if you
That's
like,
a great question. I ask myself that almost every day as well.
yeah,
Yeah, so I try to write a song every day.
okay,
And so it's actually like easier to do and be accountable for in Nashville because everybody else is also writing a song every day who's pursuing music.
hmm,
So I pretty much either write with one co-writer or two co-writers, um, 4 to 5 days a week, where we would get together for like 3 to 4 hours of a chunk, the first like 30 minutes to an hour is just like chatting, getting to know each other if we don't already, or just catching up if we do. And then the next couple hours is doing our best to write the best song we can that day. So that's been really great in accountability here. I also I'm like my own, team. So I do all of the social media and all like the back end, like data analysis and ad marketing. All of that is on, my own as well. So I'll spend a few hours like checking in on different numbers and trends and adjusting some of the ads that are running if they need to reach different audiences, or looking at like my Spotify stats for that day and like seeing like, okay, like what are we looking at here, and like how can we maybe push this song more than that song today, and where can we do that? And then prepping a post if I have to do that. And then reaching out to other people in the industry, whether I know them or not, to set up something or collaborate or just exchange some ideas or ask them to work on a project. And then some of it is just like learning. So I've actually started to learn music theory while I'm down here, because there's a lot of like talk of numbered chords and numbered notes when you're in the writing room here that will just pull me up to the next level where I need to be as a songwriter. I feel confident about lyrics. I feel confident about melody for the most part, but that technical language of like music theory and bringing in other chords outside of the chromatic scale that I don't necessarily know how to use fluently. So I've been, taking an online class about that and like teaching myself how to be more proficient. And so the days they kind of are always busy for the most part. If I have a big merch order that week, then I got to go to the post office. I got to get stuff from packaging at Walmart. I got to make sure I print my labels. So they do tend to fill up. I have to keep my expenses updated because I'm a small business owner, so people always ask like, what do you do every day? But like, it's a ton, it doesn't look like it from the outside, but really when you look at it in the scope, it gets pretty busy.
Yeah, especially if you're doing all the business end of it, which sounds like you're doing, in addition to honing your skills and learning music theory to level up in music. It sounds like a lot.
Yeah, it's good though. I've always thrived in being really busy and having a lot on my plate, so it pushes me to keep going.
Yeah. Do you feel like at any point, or do you ever feel like, oh, I would want to offload some of this business stuff in terms of advertisements or anything like that?
Yeah, I really love being in full control of my career at this point in time, because
Right.
like every, both the highs and the lows, like it's on me, like,
Mhm.
um, and eventually though, I absolutely want to build a team for sure. My only like teammate is a booking agent that I have. His name is Ben, and he's been with me since the beginning, and he's like pretty much the only person I like really bounce stuff off of, or like we'll talk to about actual business moves,
Right.
which is great to have. I'm so grateful. But eventually I do want like a marketing, you know, agent who will just be the person who keeps my brand, at the next level or whatever that
Yeah,
is. And like is always pushing like the different ways to grow in terms of social media rather than just stay afloat. Because a lot of times I just feel like I'm just keeping my followers rather than gaining followers. You know what I mean? And so I would
yeah.
love to have somebody who's really specialized in ad marketing.
Yeah, yeah. That's good. Yeah, I mean, it I guess it helps to learn everything and kind of oversee everything now, just to know what it is. You know what I mean?
Oh
Or
my gosh, yeah. I want to make sure in conversations in the future, like when they bring it up, I'll be like, cool, I used to do that. I know what you're talking about here. This is what worked. This is what didn't. Let's
right,
go.
right, right. It's also kind of cool too to like think of like being an artist, and you're like, I'm gonna be performing in front of audience, and then all of a sudden being in like business meetings and like
Ugh, the dream. I honestly
yeah.
can't wait for like a boardroom table. I'm like at the top. I'm like, what do you got for me, team? I can't wait for that day.
Like it's like not what you expected. You're like, I never knew I'd end up in a boardroom. Um,
Right, right. But like, I guess that's what I'm working toward right now. It's like people think I'm working toward like a sellout tour, and I'm actually working toward a boardroom table with a lot of people in control of my career. That's what I want.
right. And being able to do it as a career too, like financially, I mean, that's a challenge. I mean, for any
Yeah.
artist, it's probably one of the hardest things to do. I
Oh
think.
yeah.
And because I know a lot of comics, around me, and it's like you do it alongside something else.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering for you, because I know you had a moment where you were teaching first outside of college, and then you decided to go for it. Um, so like what that kind of catalyst was in those moments, and also even financially too, like being like, okay, you know, I could foresee this working.
Yeah, totally. So I was sort of taking on more than I could probably handle when I was teaching full time
Hmm.
in DC out of college, in terms of like show opportunities and different things that I knew that I had to do in order to build my music career.
Yeah.
But in turn, that was also taking the valuable time I had to keep my teaching career afloat.
Right.
And so in the spring of my first year of teaching, it basically was like teach 5 days a week, coach every day in the afternoon because I was also the lacrosse coach at the high school, and then play shows every weekend. And
Yeah.
it was just like not sustainable. And so there was one show in particular that I had at University of Delaware in March of that year that was like a big fundraiser, like thousands of people called you. It was called U Dance, and I
Hmm.
played one of my originals for the first time there, and I taught the crowd how to sing. It's
Hmm.
a song I released called Test Drive. Before
Hmm.
it was out, I taught them the chorus, and
Hmm.
it was like thousands of people were singing a song I wrote in my bedroom back to me. And it was the most surreal, like overwhelming experience of my life. And I was like, okay, I need to chase this feeling for the rest of my life. And so I kind of went back to school the next morning to my 80 prepubescent 12-year-olds who didn't do their homework. And basically, I was like, hey, in my head,
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I have a choice to make. Like, this is what I trained for 4 years in college, and this is, I still love this. I love teaching. I love kids.
Yeah.
Um, but I can kind of always come back to this if I wanted to. But I feel like right now would be the time to chase the dream, which is
Yeah.
music.
For
So
sure.
so I finished out that school year, and in the summer of 2018, I moved up to Delaware, and started doing it full time. And I knew because my booking agent had been with me for that year, we kind of made a plan like, all right, this is how we're going to do it so you can live. We're going to have these shows that have guarantees, and we're going to have these shows that are based on tickets so that you're
Right.
going to have a mix of things that are going to get you to rent every month. And so it worked, and we did it, and we grew. And I'm really grateful, let me tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean, it takes a lot of courage to. I feel like it's a leap of faith, right? Because
Yeah.
you're jumping into it. You have something secure, and then you jump, and you're like, I'm gonna give it a shot. And that journey is probably so much fun, and obviously you've been experiencing it. But that's always what I think about too. Like when I think about like security and then leaping, it's like, you know, it's, and you said too at this young of an age, it's like this is the time to leap
Yeah,
and see
this
what
is it.
happens, and there's nothing to lose.
I know. At the end of the day, like, okay, what's the worst that could happen? I go broke and then I start from go back to teaching and start from the bottom. Like, that's
Right.
literally me when I graduated college. Broke, starting teaching from the beginning. Like,
Right.
literally, what is there to lose at this point in my life?
Right.
Maybe some dignity. Like, hey, can always get that back. So it really was like something that I knew. It was so scary, of course, but
Yeah.
it was almost like the fear wasn't of like being homeless. I
Yeah.
knew I would never let myself get to that point just because of just the
Right.
boundaries I have in place for myself. The
Right.
fear was mostly of just like my own fear of failure. And I was like, okay, just get over yourself. Go and do it,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
who are you going to be disappointing except for yourself? Like, no one's going to hate you because you tried,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, you just kind of have to get out of your own way, basically.
Yeah. 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 It's very courageous. It's also like you can face I don't know, I feel like in that journey, right? Because you spend more time with yourself, probably, like traveling to go do shows, and like booking things, and like you said, you handle a lot of the work that you have to do. So you probably are like more comfortable, like, oh, like this is, it's tough, but it's also like you're able to be an individual, you're able to be yourself, like fully.
Yeah, it is. I actually learned more about myself than I've ever known because of having to be my own boss. I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, so I'm actually not a morning person, even though I got up at 6 a.m. every day to teach. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not productive at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
So like I can adjust my own hours as my own boss. And I'm like, all right, if I start at 10, then I can go until 7 rather than be off at 5. And like, that
Mhm.
works for me.
Right.
And
Right.
so I think it's more about actually placing boundaries on a workday for me now because I feel like because I'm my own boss, I can just edit a video till 3 a.m. and like, whatever.
Hmm.
But I am coming to a point where I'm like, all right, I actually do want to work like a work day, because it's not
Right.
the lack of routine is not healthy for me as I'm 25, my metabolism is slowing down, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And
I'm
so it
25
has
too.
been,
Yeah, nice.
yeah. So
Nice.
it has been good to at least have a couple years under my belt to know now when am I productive, when am I not, what makes me, you know, really do my best job. And so that's been really cool. But in the beginning, I was like completely all over the place. I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, especially with something that's more artistic, being your own boss, right? It's like having that self-discipline. Because say what you want about like school or a job or anything that's like might feel a little more restricting, but it's also like creates that routine.
Yeah,
And that routine, like I work, you know, like in an office or not right now from home, but it's like for a company. It's like that routine is I realize it's healthy. Like that's something to
it
keep
is.
no matter what
Yeah.
you change, right? In terms of career, it's like, well, keeping some sort of structure and healthy habits, that's going to help a lot, especially as like an artist, I'm sure, and in general, you know?
Totally. I mean, every college student wants to be out of class and having no papers due and no deadlines and like no reason to get up in the morning. But like, there's a reason you were productive in college, you know, because you had all of those things in place.
Right.
And with like, I'm the worst procrastinator ever. Like, I was never late, but I would be in the 11th hour working on every assignment. Like, that's just how I operate. I need that pressure
Yeah.
to be productive. And
Yeah.
so without hard deadlines and people being on me about like, you know, getting anything done or the quality, I was struggling in the beginning, keeping myself accountable and producing things that I was really proud of because I didn't have any structure in order to do that. So it's been cool to learn about myself that way too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I mean, that's again really insightful to know that, like, be aware of that, right? Too, because
Yeah.
you'll be able to like level up and keep growing. Uh,
Yeah. And I mean, acknowledging it doesn't mean it's solved. Like there are
yeah,
still
right.
days when I'm like, I didn't do like really much of anything today. And I feel like I was working, but like nothing got done because there's no pressure to get it done. There's no deadline.
Yeah.
So yes, there's that awareness, kind of like you were saying, like I scrolled Instagram, like that doesn't mean it stopped, but at least I acknowledged it, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's step one to making a change.
Yeah, for sure. No, I can completely relate. I've been waking up early, so like by 6:30 every just on my own, like I'm getting up early. And like I had string of like 11, 12, like 2 weeks. And then I was like getting up at 7:30, and then I was like, all right, now we're starting to get here. You know, one day here or there out of five or six, it'll be like eight. I'm like,
Yeah.
not the goal. And so like I'm like, you know, it's like you said, it's like this is your plan, and you
Yep.
sometimes you hit around it. You
Exactly.
don't
And
hit it
you gotta keep throwing though, because one day you will hit it.
exactly. I'm like, you're like, darn it, and then you're like, well, I got to move on.
Yeah, it's time. Like just go ahead.
Yeah, um, that's cool to recognize, even though like the morning person thing, because those are like, I feel like that's like maybe a social construct too of like, oh, you should get up early all the time, and like if that's
Yeah.
not how you're productive, then you change it, right? And but that breaks
Yeah.
what all the motivational speeches are like, gotta get up at 4.
No, I will literally not work until 9 still. Even if I got up early, I still won't get anything done. So like we just get more sleep and then actually be productive when the hour that your body is ready to be productive.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
still set alarms. It's not like I just like let the sun awake me at 9:12 every morning. Like I have an alarm, you know, I know what I'm doing.
Wake
But
up
I try to
naturally every
be,
day.
yeah, exactly. Be like, oh, the sun, my sun-kissed face. Like, no, that doesn't really happen. But I do try to be more consistent because it just like helps, you know, in general.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's great. I don't run low on time, so I do want to bring up this topic of like in music and in general, like being vulnerable. So it's
Hmm.
like when you're writing songs and also like it's nostalgia, like you bring back past. And I've listened to like your songs, and it's like a lot of it's past memories. So having like, where did the courage to share that come from? And then, you know, how was it formed like early on? And it's like, do people reach out to maybe fans who are like, this really hit with me, you know?
Oh, that's the greatest, I guess, compliment I could ever receive. A piece of feedback is someone being like, I'm sorry, did you read my diary this morning? Like that is like my favorite thing is people
Yeah.
being like, so actually get out of my brain. I would really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's I think because I was raised at, on Taylor Swift when I was growing up, and that's kind of like how I got my start with music. And she's very diaristic in her writing. Everybody feels like they're her best friend because she shares so much of her life.
Hmm.
And that's why they follow her like a cult, is because they feel like they know her. And I thought that was just like so effective. And that's just also the kind of songwriting I gravitated toward as a listener.
Hmm.
So I try to do that as well. And if people are connecting to my music, I want that to be rooted in honesty, because if they're connecting and they're like, wow, you know me so well, but it's like a made up story, like I would feel fake being like, oh, like thank you for sharing, even though like I don't get it. So
Hmm.
I really love, my favorite part of this whole thing is those moments at after shows when people come up to the merch table like with tears in their eyes saying like, you really spoke to me. And it was my story that I told, but
Right.
that's something that I was able to, share, and they were able to share back. And that's like so, so special.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, it's something that it's a choice you have to make, is to be vulnerable, but I think it's way more rewarding to do it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, totally.
Probably, yeah, probably feels very like purposeful too, right? You're like, wow, I
Yeah.
really like like made someone like feel like they're past or like confronted or whatever it is, but it's like it's such a like
Yeah.
powerful emotion.
Seriously. I mean, it's really powerful. I mean, literally just yesterday I posted like a snippet of a song I just wrote on TikTok,
Yeah.
and somebody, like a stranger, was like, she literally commented, I feel like I've finally begun to heal.
Wow.
What?
What?
Like that is crazy to
Yeah.
me, because I wrote that song to start to heal. And
Yeah.
now, months later, or I guess it's only a couple days later,
Yeah.
I'm sharing it, and somebody else is saying like, I've started to heal because of the way that you shared your healing process. And like that to me is, you know, so like it's just that changes everything. Like that is the reason why I do this.
Hmm.
Like I could have a million streams or one, but that one person saying I've begun to heal, like that, the power in that is like incredible.
Yeah.
So that's why I do it.
Yeah, that's such a great feeling, especially like that specific of a comment. It's not like, oh, I remember this from my past. It's like, I'm
No,
healing now
like I
because of
literally,
you.
I am healing because of
Like,
your 34-second clip on TikTok this morning on my For You page. Like that is what? That's so crazy.
yeah, that is
Yeah.
crazy. I haven't gotten that from any of my comedy sets, but people laugh.
No one's healing yet from your comedy. I think it'll happen.
I I do another thing that I think is funny too, like with merch, right? Like probably like having your face on. I don't know if you have your face on your merch, but like if you
No
did.
face, but name. A lot of name stuff.
Okay, got it, got it. I was just thinking, I just had a thought. I'm like, what if your face is on merch and stuff? Like, I don't know
Yeah.
how I would like if I saw my face on someone.
Oh yeah, that's yeah. I haven't really gotten to that point yet, but because
I mean,
of course I'm telling
I will
myself,
wear that shirt with your face on it, but
wow, thank you. That means a lot.
I just from the
It's also
artist
funny because
perspective.
oh yeah, in our perspective, it's creepy as heck. But it's also funny because you're in our hometown right now, and if you like wore that to the grocery store, like chances are there might be somebody who's like, "Oh, I know who that is," and you're like actually just wearing it on a merch shirt. Like it'd be different for you to wear it in our hometown than someone in like Nebraska where no one's ever heard of me. But it's almost like, didn't she go to East Greenwich High School like 8 years ago? Like
Yeah,
I don't know. That's funnier to me than
yeah,
anything else.
yeah.
Oh man.
I wear it on my trips to India.
Yes, incredible. Like, international. Let's go. Bring it.
Yeah, well, 89 countries, all right, this past year on Spotify.
Yeah.
So India, I hope India was one of them. Do you
It
know?
was.
It was
Oh, it
no,
totally was.
really?
I absolutely.
That's
Yeah, yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. It's actually it's most countries that
Yeah,
like have a presence on the internet, you
yeah,
know? There's just countries that are, I think only 92 actually allow Spotify in their country. Wow, this I'm really finding my light right now with the sun going down.
yeah. No,
Um, I'm like, wow, I'm
very
like
vibrant. You're
glowing.
like
Like
glowing.
what's like going on right now? But only I think it's 92 countries that actually allow Spotify to be streamed in their country. So
Yeah,
89 means I'm only three shy. I would love to know which three I'm missing and target all my ads to like Zimbabwe next year and to
Yeah.
get them on the map. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But 89 is pretty cool. I mean, that's like 98%. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that there were 92 qualified. That's like that's
Yeah.
like a perfect international
It's
score
wild.
on
Yeah. Yeah.
Spotify.
I know. It's crazy. It's wild.
That's crazy. That's a cool concept too, like how like different countries listen to songs in English and like still feel it. Like that's
Yeah.
wild.
It is wild. I'm like, is the music you feel? Like, you probably speak a lot more of, multiple languages than I do, I'm sure.
I
Because
don't
Americans suck, but it's fine.
Language, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Right. Not
But
at everything. Yeah.
not at everything,
Yeah.
but the ability to be like culturally, fluent in other ways, like maybe. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I listen to songs in Spanish. Sometimes I don't know what they're saying most of the time. I just like
yeah.
possible.
Spanish songs are so fun though. Like they have way more fun than we know how to have, I
Way
think,
more
personally. They really do. Like, oh my gosh, I just want to dance constantly. Doesn't matter the beat, doesn't matter where I am. I'm just like shaking to those beats. They're so good.
It's so true. There's like at common songs at weddings and stuff, like here in America
Yeah.
too, like there's Danza Kuduro, like that's a big one. And
Yep.
like everything. And like I know all the words and I'm like,
Oh, of course. Gasolina, put it on. I'll sing every word to you right now. Like, yeah. Despacito, bring it on. Like,
yeah, yeah.
I know.
But no, this has been fun. Definitely, I know we're running low on time, so wrap it up. But before we end this, are there any plugs that you want to do?
Oh, yes, thank you. I just came out with a new song about a month and a half ago called Portland. So that music video is now up with the song everywhere. So you can just search my name, Marielle Kraft, on literally any platform, and hopefully you'll find me. Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Pandora, Tidal, literally anywhere, Instagram, TikTok. I'm there. Let's be cyber friends. Let's do it.
Yeah, yeah. Follow Marielle on everything. You will not regret it. There's incredible music.
Thank you.
And I've been jamming out to it lately too. So for all our listeners, you should definitely check out some songs. But thank you so much for doing this. Again, I think it's incredible that you're chasing the dream and doing it like boldly and courageously, and it's very inspiring. Just to be around.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. This was really cool.
Yeah. And for our listeners, stay tuned for the next episode. We'll be back. This UnCoNfY CoNvOs train keeps on rolling. All right. We'll see you later.